Okay, so in our prior segments, we've been talking about attitudes. Persuasion is defined as the process of trying to change attitudes. And there are a number of factors that can affect whether an ad is persuasive or not. These factors fall under three categories: perceptions of the message, the ad itself; perceptions of the source, maybe the spokesperson or the company itself, the source of the message; and finally, factors about the consumer. So we're going to start here with message factors. Not surprisingly, argument strength is one. Strong arguments are more persuasive than weak ones, of course. 4 out of 5 dentists is better than 1 out of 5. But think like a scientist. 5 is still an inadequately small sample size, right? Arguments can be strong, but they also can be irrelevant. So what if you have a strong, irrelevant argument? Argument relevance is another factor here, a message factor that affects persuasion. Politicians are great at this, right? At irrelevant arguments. Asked to defend a position, they give strong arguments about sometimes something completely different, hoping you won't notice. Relevant arguments should work better than irrelevant ones, and they do with kind of that more careful central processing, though not always with peripheral processing when we are less likely to detect their irrelevance. Another message factor is the number of arguments. Number alone shouldn't matter, right? But often it does, at least for those taking a peripheral route of processing. Note that number of strong arguments would be a different story. The more the better, but not number alone. Also, repetition shouldn't matter either, right? But again, it does, up to a certain point. The more we hear something, the more we tend to believe it. The positive effects plateau, though, over time. Boredom effects build in a little bit more slowly, but they do not plateau. So marketers have to think about this very carefully, monitor where the positive effects of repetition plateau, and not to exceed that point where the negative effects of boredom become stronger, right? To make sure that you understand this, see if you can draw it. So after hearing these instructions, pause the video and try this. But first, 1, reproduce this graph outline on a paper. So freeze the picture here and reproduce this on a picture. Next, you're going to be drawing a line representing the effects of repetition on attitude, showing where it eventually plateaus. And next, draw another line representing the effects of boredom on attitude. Remember that the effects of boredom build a little slower than the effects of repetition, but they don't plateau over time. You can start them both about here, okay, about that neutral point in attitude. Pause this video now until you finish your drawing, and then start the video again and compare with my drawing to see if you understood this correctly. So your drawing should look something like this one, in that your upward slope of repetition is steeper than your downward slope of boredom, but that it plateaus where boredom does not. So if it looks something like this, this is good evidence that you understand the effects of repetition and boredom on attitudes. If not, you'll want to stop and replay that part of your video lecture and then try to draw independently again. If you imagine a line in the middle now, mediating the process, right, between these two effects, you will see that repetition is still winning out here, increasing attitudes. However, where this graph ends off, it's still increasing attitudes, but it's not going to for much longer, right? The boredom effect is going to take over. Another message factor involves high attention items like fear, humor, or sex. Remember, though, that fear appeals have their limitations. This is a good review question. So pause the video a moment, see if you can recall the two most prominent criteria for fear ads to actually work. The answer is they must be moderate or low fear, and they must provide a solution, right? Remember that way from the beginning of class. Research clearly shows that humor can increase attention. However, there is no clear evidence to date that it also increases other memory processes like interpretation, let alone positive interpretation, or memory, or consumer behavior, likelihood of actually buying a product. That said, attention is a good place to start with humor as long as it's positive. In other words, the humor must not offend. Does sex really sell? Better in European countries than American, where more people are made uncomfortable with sexual images in public. On average, Americans respond better to scantily clad models in ads than they do to nudity.